I do like a town that's founded in honour of a Roman head rolling down a hillside like a human football. I've also been known to speak highly of a place where you can get served in the local boozer by a former cast member of a now controversial 70s sitcom. Plus, like most people, I'm hardly averse to gently curving streets of tiled rooftops and sagging pageantry, bedecked with pseudo-Victorian street lamps, cocked at charmingly crooked angles. So if this is the jewel in the crown of the so-called commuter belt, how long does it take you to travel to your job in central Birmingham? It's that time of year again. Memories of Knaresborough, Bradford-on-Avon, Devizes, Bath, Wells, and in particular Ripon Marketplace for some reason. Depends how well you know your Cummings world. But it's the last week of the summer holidays. That sense of ending, sense of the world shifting onto its next phase. The light becomes more suffused with yellow. The heat becomes more intense and fleeting. It's a pity, really, that we never really get what we want in life. For the last 27 years, I've been growing a little grim around the edges, just around now, at the thought of returning to the constraints of the working week. The harvest light outside the schoolroom window, unattainable to teacher and pupil alike. And now, with the spectre of retirement looming, as we begin to count down towards that apparent freedom, I'm just fed up that we're not here for long enough. It's that peak that was previously in view, now become rising ground, like in Philip Larkin's terrifying poem. It's like Michael Caine says at the end of Alfie. Seems to me, if they ain't got you one way, they got you another. So what's the answer? Know what I mean? Speaking of Michael Caine in Alfie, the dancing light on the water and the weeping willows remind me of that terrible scene where he's about to seduce Mrs. Clammercraft, where he looks up to the camera and says something like, "Well, what's the harm?" And it'll round off the afternoon nicely. The horror of that scene, our horror in it, is of course created by our foreknowledge of future events. Something of which I had nothing when I first strolled along this path back in 1988, armed with my Sony Walkman, my copy of the NME, and most importantly, my brand new sideburns. When I was a young man, I used to wonder for hours and hours and hours, staring into the train window, armed with my young person's rail card and a sense of limited, localised wanderlust. What would the future be like? It seemed incomprehensible, unimaginable. And now I'm here, and it still does. It feels, though, like living afterwards. A sense that that was one thing, and this isn't a continuation. It's an entirely separate place. The past is another country. All of that L.P Hartley stuff. And nowhere do I feel it more keenly than here in St Albans. I remember arriving here for the first time back in 1988, just the 31 years ago. It was a Saturday. I'd got up, as you do, gone to a jumble sale in Cradley Heath, bought a copy of Ray Bradbury's The Golden Apples of the Sun, and a lovely copy of Animal Farm that I read on the train. I can still see Boxer's hooves beating the cart windows as they take him to the glue factory. I arrived at Watford and I spent a lot of time on Watford Station. The reason I spent such a lot of time on Watford Station was because I sat there wondering when the St Albans train was going to turn up before peering over the edge and realising there wasn't any track there and that I was in completely the wrong part of the station. Never mind, good to get that learnt. I arrived at the then tiny regional station of St Albans Abbey. The new one is behind me, beyond those trees, and walked up the hill and through my gateway into the south of England. There's something about cathedral cities, the presence of a cathedral, even if you can't see it. There are notable exceptions, I think, whereby the cathedral or the great church hides in a fold in the town, waiting to pounce, waiting to perform its coup de théâtre, but most of them hover like great ships on the horizon, affording you little glimpses above the rooftops, beyond the town, beyond the window's edge. There's a sense of a different scale, the fact that they've been built for an entirely different purpose from all of the other buildings, like cooling towers. They remind me of René Magritte's great apple bursting out of that room. As I've said, when I first arrived in St Albans, I wasn't even aware that there was a cathedral here. I saw, like most people, in terms of a very narrow field of vision. It's a little bit like those road safety videos you see, and you watch it through once, and then the course leader says, "And who noticed the breakdancing bear?" They play it again. Everyone gasps. And I saw the town in terms of a series of streets, a little playground for myself. I never thought about its purpose, its shape, its origin, until one afternoon, a wet black afternoon, a wet black January afternoon, in a different era, in the mid-90s, when I was travelling across the southeast of England by train, and I suddenly saw it flash on the hillside, a dark bulk, and I got it whole, the sense of that Roman settlement, the cathedral hilltop city, the sense of the organic development of the town below. That hillside down which St Albans' head apparently rolled. Apparently he was a Roman martyr who sheltered a Christian, refused to give him up, refused to renounce his faith, took his place and was beheaded thus. I still see his little head rolling down the hillside like a football every time I hear the name of the city.
There's something about you wearing shades indoors that makes me want to say, or get you to say, give me your clothes, your boots and your motorcycle.
Yeah, I don't know whether I can see me in motorcycle leathers more. Give me your cravat, your safari suit and your sandals. So yeah, folks, I'm afraid this is going to be at least as much reminiscing package as it is travelogue. No, I hear you cry. Stick to those cold, hard facts that you deal in so effectively, Cummings. We rely on you for that. But no, the mists of time, the sands of time, and loads of other things of time are shifting and clearing and making me sense my former self, the way that I used to view the world. This is perhaps my first excursion into Cummings' world, because when you think of it, when you're young, most of our worlds are very small, aren't they? They're very constrained by where our parents take us on holiday, where we live and go to school, perhaps where some of our more far-flung relatives are from. Up to the age of 19, I think my world consisted of Stourbridge, Kidderminster, Worcester, Halesowen, Preston in Lancashire, the Lake District, Sidmouth in Devon, and an occasional visit to London. And all of those were imposed upon me, but this, St Albans, was my first step, my first deliberate step outwards, because I had a friend who I met at Stourbridge College who came to work in a graphic design company down here, and I took myself off on the train and I packed my own bag and I met him in the Goat and we went drinking round the town, something, as I've said, that St Albans is very good for. And so my map began to expand, and since then I have been consumed by the desire to experience place. Perhaps in a different way to you, Lee, I think, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, we've talked about this quite a few times, haven't we?
Yeah.
Sort of that desire to go and explore kicked in massively for me in my late teens, and it happened for you in terms of travelling around England, didn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas
yeah.
I was a little more sort of interested in sort of seeing the world, if you like, if I can put it that way. I'm trying not to sound like a git, but yeah, it's certainly formulated there, but very much driven to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, I think, don't see English exploration or British exploration as exploration, but I still do. And as I say, I got that sense when I first came to St Albans, because it still is to me palpably southern. My experience of it was the experience of a young man, just like when you go and see a painting when you're young, you revisit that painting 20 or 30 years later, it's a different painting in many ways. And I don't know if I noticed there was a cathedral. I don't know what I noticed about it other than, as I said, those pubs, those streets in which they resided, the opportunity to live life on my own terms. But it still feels to me very different from where I was from. And I think that sense of being somewhere that is different from elsewhere, and those defining and dividing lines between those places, those joints in which the difference resides, still occupies my thoughts. As I get older, I think more and more about what Philip Larkin calls that unique random blend of families and fashions. Philip Larkin being Philip Larkin, he thought of it in terms of death in ambulances. For me, it's been always in terms of place, and perhaps here is where it began. Once again, I don't know whether it's the napped flint or the patchwork combination of building materials, but there's something about that gatehouse that is indelibly of the southeast of England to me, even though gatehouses were springing up all over England at around that time. To me, that's not the Midlands, it's not the north, it's here. And it reminded me a bit of what you were saying earlier about that sense of becoming aware of your regionality and how yours is very different to mine.
Yeah, that's right. My nan was actually from round here.
Yeah.
And I remember coming down here with my dad when I was a kid, and thinking, they speak funny round here. And then perhaps just having that first glimmer of thinking, actually, it might not be them.
Yeah.
It might be me.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the first time. You know, when you're young, I remember just thinking, you watch the telly, and when you're very young, you're kind of relying on my dad to tell me whether the programme's set in America or in Britain, you know, or things like that. And then, yeah, just being, actually, these people do sound a little bit like people off the telly, but I don't think I do.
Yeah, that's very different from my experience. Again, a bit like when we were saying in Wales about our holiday experiences as children, because I was the only member of my family, and still am the only member of my family to emanate from the Black Country, because I was surrounded by Southerners and Northerners, I was made to be aware of the difference in my locality right from the start. But that's an interesting point, the idea of suddenly awakening into a world that did not speak as you did. Maybe it's its proximity to London and the fact that it's a rather lovely cathedral city within the immediate vicinity of the smoke. But there's an awful lot of people, famous people, who either live or have lived here. David Essex, Donovan, Stephen Hawking, Ardal O'Hanlon, Matthew Holness, Paul Catamol,
Who's Paul Catamount?
He's don't know. Who is he?
Was he in that band?
What band?
You know that band.
S Club 7.
Oh, what were they called? No. Peter and the Test Tube Babies.
Yeah, that's him.
Again, looking down there, it's the south of England writ large, isn't it? If they built extensions onto towns in the way that they build extensions onto houses, you could stick that on the end of Faversham or similar towns in Kent or Suffolk, but you'd have a real job of sticking it on the end of Kidderminster. Maybe it's time we courted a little controversy here at Cummings Your Way. We're usually overweeningly positive. I think probably our pedigree as teachers, but also our personalities and a wish not to contribute anything more venomous or cynical to a world that is already both, has informed us thus. But really, the Lucas Welcome Centre, it looks like a small industrial unit or a shoemaking factory stuck right onto the transept. It's a horrible thing, and to be honest, I'm not going to go in the cathedral now. I was going to go in. I was going to talk about the unusual roof, the pre-Christian graffiti. I was going to make a great deal of Grimthorpe's additions to the cathedral, but no, can't be bothered now because of the Lucas Welcome Centre. Actually, I've just come round the corner and realised that you can go in through the west front just like you used to be able to. So, scrub everything I've just said. There's nothing really wrong with the Lucas Welcome Centre. Mother, Father, kindly disregard this letter. Some things don't change though. St Albans then and St Albans now are still lovely places for a pub crawl.
Are you ready to do your Steve Tyler Walk This Way dance routine?
No, I'm going to do the one from Dude Looks Like a Lady, where he propels himself forward like a dog wiping his bottom on the grass. Actually, I'm not. Now there's a funny thing, the White Hart Tap. One drunken night, I have to admit, in 1988, 89, I was 19 or 20, in the darkness of the streets behind the other pubs that we'd visited. I was taken there and more than a little surprised to see Melvyn Hayes serving behind the bar. Melvyn Hayes, for those of you who don't know, played Gloria, the camp entertainment officer in the very infrequently shown comedy It Ain't Half Hot Mum, you know, oh dear, how sad, never mind, la-di-da, gonna Graham, all of that, if not, ask a grown-up, etc. But it absolutely flabbergasted me, as it would. I went back to Stourbridge, wondering who I was going to see, popping up behind my local bar, you know, Lord Lucan perhaps, as he always used to do behind the bar in Spitting Image, if you remember. Was Mark Almond going to be serving in the local newsagents, along with Phil Oakey? Who knows? But it reconfigured my universe somewhat. He's not there anymore. I think I read recently that he wasn't terribly good at running it, or that his wife ran it for him. Perhaps he'll write in and correct me. I doubt it, though.
He's written in before complaining, just generally, even when you're not talking about him.
Was that really, really unpleasant thing? Was that him?
Yeah, I think that was him, yeah.
I wonder if it all stems back to that night.
Who'd have thought he'd be so angry?
Well, there are parts of that night that are still very, very vague.